I raised my daughter with everything I had: money, time, love, and even my self-respect. But then on a day that seemed ordinary, she looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, I don't want you in my life anymore." A few weeks later, I quietly took back the car I'd bought her, canceled the credit card, and stayed silent through dozens of angry texts. I stood in front of the third-floor apartment door, holding a gift box wrapped in silver tissue paper, the red ribbon slightly crooked because my hands were shaking when I tied it. Inside was a tiny gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant, the last thing her mother wore before going into the hospital, and I'd saved it, waiting for her 21st birthday to give it to her. I pictured the moment she'd open the box, her eyes lighting up like they did when she was little, finding candy in her Christmas stocking. But the door didn't open. Instead, my phone buzzed. "Dad, I don't want you showing up tonight. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends." I stared at the text on the bright screen, each word hitting my chest like a blow. The early December wind slipped through the hallway, colder than anything I'd ever taken for granted. I knocked once, softly, as if still asking permission to be a father. No one answered. From behind the door, I heard music, something with a fast beat, the laughter of friends her age. While I stood there, a man nearing 60, out of place with a gift in hand, like a peddler of rejected love. I whispered, "I just wanted to give you this gift, then I'll go." But only I heard my voice break in the air. I set the box down on the doorstep, straightened it, and turned away. The staircase stretched downward like a steep wall of truth I no longer had the strength to hold on to. I'd thought I was a decent father, maybe not flashy, but always there. I worked 2 jobs to cover her tuition, sold my 2002 pickup to help her buy that used Civic, and for tonight's dinner I'd planned to take her to that Italian restaurant, the one she once said had the best garlic bread in town. But it seems her tastes have changed too. I stepped into the parking lot, the high-rise buildings reflecting yellow lights mixed with thin falling snow, a beautiful cold scene like the empty palms of my hands. I sat in the driver's seat, not starting the car yet. Part of me still thought she'd text back, that she'd open the door and run out, hug me and say, "It was just a misunderstanding, Dad." But my phone stayed silent. I looked at the building one last time, saw her shadow past the window, hair tied high, short dress, wine glass in hand, smiling brightly at someone who wasn't me. That was the first time I truly understood my daughter had grown into someone who no longer needed me in her life. And if she said so, maybe I should listen. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment where you're watching from. Let me know what time it is where you are. I drove slowly through streets cloaked in night fog, the tires crunching lightly on the damp, cold road, as if the whole city was whispering something I didn't want to hear. At the red light on 5th and Blake, I looked to my left, the spot where I used to take her for vanilla ice cream after piano lessons when she was little. Now the ice cream shop is an iPhone repair store. The white glow of the LED sign reflected on my windshield, and I caught my face in the rearview mirror. Gray hair, sunken eyes, the face of a man who just lost something vital but lacked the strength to search for it. When I got home, everything was dark. No one left the porch light on for me. No one waited for me to eat dinner. I didn't turn on the light right away, just sat in the car for a few minutes, hands still on the steering wheel, listening to the tired hum of the car's heater. Finally, I got out, walked inside, opened the door with my left hand because my right was still clutching the phone, my last hope that she'd text back. But there was nothing. The house greeted me with the smell of dampness and silence. I took off my shoes, hung my coat on the hook, and stopped in the entryway, feeling like I'd returned to a place that was once a home but now just an empty shell of what was lost. I stepped into the kitchen, the small kitchen where Maria used to wash dishes, hands covered in soap, turning to smile when I mentioned our daughter. Now the sink was bone dry, the dish towel draped over the chair, old and frayed. I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, then closed it right away. Not hungry, not thirsty, just searching for something to fill the emptiness inside. I sat at the dining table, back against the chair, eyes on the ceiling, then glanced at the photo of her on the wall. 5th grade, short hair, hugging the teddy bear I bought at the fair. The frame was tilted, as if it too didn't want to stay in place. I got up, went to the bedroom, turned on the bedside lamp. The dim yellow light fell on the peeling paint near the window. I'd promised to fix it last year, but never did, always spending money on something for her. I opened the nightstand drawer, pulled out the expense notebook I'd kept since Maria passed. Scrawled numbers: tuition $9,400 a year, laptop $1,300, car insurance $168 month, and miscellaneous costs, concert tickets, curling iron, graduation gown rental. Not a single line said repaid. I flipped through the pages, recalling each expense. Each time I said, "It's okay, honey, Dad's got it." Now the clearest proof I never considered my own limits. Beneath the notebook was a folded piece of paper, Maria's handwritten letter to me when our daughter was born. "You'll be a good father, I believe it." I believed it too, once. I folded it back, carefully placed it in its spot, and stared at the ceiling as if hoping it would collapse so I wouldn't have to stay awake. But the ceiling didn't fall, only my heart cracked with each tick of the clock in the night, each sound a reminder that I'd been gently erased from her life. No one cried, no one shouted, no conflict dramatic enough to leave a mark, just a text, a closed door, and a party where I was no longer family. And in this cold bedroom for the first time, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt strange, lost in the role I once thought was permanent, being a father. I don't clearly recall the day I decided to buy her a car of her own. Maybe it was when she called me during work, frantic because she missed the bus home after tutoring. Or maybe it was that evening she stood in the rain, soaked to the bone because her Uber canceled at the last minute and her friends were already gone. But I remember the feeling, the mix of frustration and love when she said, "If I had a car, I wouldn't bother you anymore." And somehow that sentence pushed me to take out a third line of credit in 2 years. A 2014 Silver Civic, automatic cloth seats, 85,000 miles. Not a shiny new car, but it ran smoothly, had good AC, and most importantly, fit my budget. I test drove it twice, checked the tires, brakes, warning lights. I even took it to a friend's garage for a final look. They said, "It's solid, man, perfect for your daughter." I nodded, something like hope stirring inside. Hope that this gift would make her happy and grateful. I drove it home, put the key in a velvet box with a small card. "Wishing you a steady hand on the wheel and know there's always someone behind you." I carefully parked it right in front of the house, under the maple tree where Maria used to hang Christmas lights. The next morning, I stood by the window watching her step out, hair in a high bun, college hoodie, coffee in hand. She stopped when she saw the car, squinting. I held my breath. She looked around, then ran back inside. I heard her footsteps thumping up the stairs, then my door burst open. "Dad, whose car is out front?" I smiled, put a hand on her shoulder. "Yours." Her jaw dropped. "For real? You're kidding?" "Nope. Paperwork's in my name, but it's yours to use. Just keep it maintained. Check the oil regularly, and don't forget to fill the tank." She hugged me tight. That was the last time I felt her arms really hold me. We drove out for breakfast that day. She picked a sandwich shop I didn't like much. Dry bread, loud music, but I didn't say anything. I let her drive, sat in the passenger seat, watched her small hands on the wheel, her eyes sparkling with pride. She thanked me at least 3 times, and I thought, maybe I did it right. I didn't know that just a year later I wouldn't be allowed in that car anymore except to pay for insurance or fill the tank. I remember about 8 months ago texting her to remind her to change the oil. No response. A week later I called. She picked up, voice curt. "Dad, can you stop controlling me? I'm grown." I froze for a few seconds. Then I apologized. Me, the one paying the car loan monthly, apologized for reminding her to maintain it. The longer it went on, the more I felt like a secondary contact in her life. Only called for emergencies, paying full dues but with no access privileges. I remember when she cracked the windshield backing into a pole in a parking lot. I said, "It's okay, I'll handle it." And I did. $540. I remember when she locked her keys in the car on a trip. I paid for a late-night tow truck, $270. I remember when she said, "My friend says this car is so basic," and I heard the embarrassment in her voice, something I never thought I'd cause. Maybe in her eyes, I was an inconvenience tied to a lack of glamour. But I kept paying the insurance, replacing tires, even washing the car for her when she stopped by. Every time she texted, "Dad, the car's making a weird noise," I dropped everything. Not because I loved mechanics, because it was one of the rare times she called without asking for money. Looking back, I realized that car wasn't just a vehicle. It was the last symbol of the bond between me and my daughter, a symbol I willingly gave, not knowing that one day I'd be the one to take it back. But that night, her 21st birthday, as I stood silently under her closed door, I realized maybe that car was no longer hers, and maybe she never truly valued what my hands had offered. I don't recall exactly when she first used that phrase with me. Maybe it was an afternoon over a year ago, after a call where I just wanted to ask if she'd have dinner with me that weekend. I still have her text from afterward. "Dad, I need you to understand this. You have toxic energy I don't want to be around anymore." At first I thought she was joking. Toxic energy? I repeated aloud, then laughed dryly to myself. Me, the one who walked in the rain to bring her cough syrup in middle school, who drove her to swim lessons every summer morning at 6 a.m., who skipped breakfast for 2 months to pay for her crash course SAT prep, suddenly defined by one word, toxic. I remember typing a long reply, wanting to explain, to recount the times she hugged me after a fall, the times she called Dad save me when she flunked a test. But I deleted it. I didn't want to be the one clinging. A few days later, I asked over the phone, "Can you explain so I understand? What did I do to make you feel this way?" Her voice was so calm it chilled me. "You don't respect my boundaries. You always want me to live the way you think is right. You don't accept that I'm an adult." I stayed silent for a long time. Because if I argued, I'd be seen as stubborn. If I agreed, I'd have nothing left. I remember when she was in high school, after a breakup or falling out with friends, she'd curl up on the sofa, head on my lap, letting me stroke her hair while I told stories from my college days. Back then, I was her only safe place. Now I'm an invasion of her personal boundaries. I don't know where she learned those phrases. Maybe self-help books, healing podcasts, or her mental health TikTok friends. But I know one thing. My daughter no longer sees me as a person who can hurt. She sees me as a symbol of what she wants to erase from her modern life. A father from a dated, controlling, clingy generation. Once, I said, "I saw you posted about drinking with friends. I got a bit worried." She replied coldly, "You don't have the right to monitor or judge my life. I'm an independent individual," I said. "I'm not judging, I'm just worried." She gave a faint laugh. "There you go, using emotions to manipulate me." I froze. Manipulate. From then on, I started staying quiet. I didn't text much, didn't call much, didn't dare ask if she was sleeping enough or dating anyone. I was afraid of being called controlling. I began to shrink, pulling back from fatherhood like pulling a hand from fire, though my heart still burned. But then something happened that I couldn't stay silent about. That day, the joint bank account I set up for her living expenses, capped at $600 a month, was drained in 3 days. The transaction history was clear. Uber Eats, Sephora, a $200 jacket. I called, keeping my voice gentle. "Honey, are you spending a bit too much?" On the other end, she sighed. "Are you controlling my money now?" "No, I'm just worried." Worried again. "You use worry to make me feel guilty. That's the most toxic energy." I didn't know what to say. I heard background music, her friends laughing, then a door slamming. The call ended with a long, cold beep. That night, I sat in the living room, TV off, listening to the fridge hum like the only monologue left in the house. I thought about how she called me toxic. I thought about how I taught her to peel an orange, held her when she was scared of thunder, stood in the rain waiting for her after tutoring so she wouldn't lose face by calling me. All those things now boiled down to one concept: emotional manipulation. I didn't cry. I just felt numb. Numb to the point I didn't know if I still existed in my daughter's heart, or if I'd become a shadow, faint, annoying, replaceable, erased with a single trendy accusation. And the most painful question lingered: if I'm the toxic one, who taught her how to love, at least in those early years? Who did that? Or was I truly wrong from the start, without ever knowing? The first time I gave her the secondary credit card, she just said, "Thanks, Dad." No hug, no sparkling eyes like when she was little, getting a tiny gift like a cat pattern notebook, just an empty phrase like she was being granted a right she assumed she deserved. I remember saying clearly, "Only use it when absolutely necessary. School supplies, food, medicine, not for luxury stuff." She nodded so quickly I had to repeat myself. But I trusted her. I trusted because I wanted to, because I thought, at least, my daughter would be sensible. 3 days later, the first transaction appeared, a $129 pair of designer shoes, then a floral dress from Nordstrom, a Dyson curling iron, dinner at a Japanese restaurant where the cheapest dish was $28, a place I'd never dared book. I meant to text her gently, but then thought maybe it was a friend's birthday gift or a post-exam treat. The next week, I got a notification that the card was nearing its credit limit, $1,850. I sat staring at the statement like it was a foreign language, numbers dancing on a white background, each transaction a cut into my trust. I called. She didn't pick up. I left a message, "Call me back, honey. We need to talk about the card." Not until evening did she call, voice irritated. "Do you have to check every penny I spend?" I said softly. "I'm not checking. The bank sends reports. I have to pay that money, honey." She laughed. Not a happy laugh, but a scoff. "I thought you gave me the card because you trusted me. Turns out it's just to monitor and judge." I was speechless. "I'm not judging, but you're spending a lot, don't you think?" She replied curtly. "That's your problem, not mine." Then hung up. I sat stunned in the living room. The curtains swayed lightly in the breeze, but all I heard was "not mine" echoing, like a knife slicing through the paychecks I'd poured into that card. After that, I said I'd cancel the card. She went silent for days, no reply. Then one afternoon I went to her school unannounced to drop off some car insurance papers she needed to sign. She walked out of the dorm with her friends, hair straightened, heavy makeup, thigh-high skirt. On her arm was a Coach bag I'd never seen. In her hand a Starbucks coffee, and around her neck a thin, shiny necklace, not the one I gave her. I called her name. She turned, briefly surprised, then immediately cold. "What are you doing here?" I held up the papers. "Car insurance. Need your signature to renew." Her friends stopped, eyeing me like I was a delivery guy ruining their photo shoot. One giggled softly. She whispered, "Can you just email it? I'm busy." I kept calm. "It'll only take a minute. I drove over 3 hours to get here." She hesitated, then sighed. Fine, give it here. She signed quickly without reading. I said thanks. She didn't respond. Her friends started walking. One said casually, "Tell him not to show up like that again. It's awkward." I heard it clearly. She didn't react, just followed them, not looking back. I stood there holding the papers, throat tight like someone punched me from the inside. I wasn't mad at her friend. I was mad that my daughter didn't bother to defend me. Not one, that's my dad. Not a sympathetic glance, just the silence of someone who didn't want to be tied to that ordinary man. On the drive back, I stopped at a gas station. When I pulled out my wallet to pay, I saw the secondary credit card still there. A cold piece of plastic, once a symbol of love, now just proof I'd let someone walk all over me without breaking. I pulled it out, snapped it in half, then in quarters. The last piece fell to the car floor. A soft click, small but final, like the first time I learned to cut the circuit of emotion from someone I loved desperately. I still keep the receipt from that meal tucked in my notebook like someone saves a movie ticket from a first date. Not because it was beautiful, but because it marked the end. The small Italian restaurant on 14th Street where she'd squealed with delight at 16. "The pasta here is better than Olive Garden, Dad." I'd reserved a table a week in advance for Saturday night, right after her midterms. I wanted a chance to mend things, or at least let her know I was still here, toxic label or not. I chose a spot by the window where soft yellow light fell on the table like a warm coat of paint, trying to convince me things could go back to how they were. I arrived early, as always, sat twirling my water glass, adjusted the silverware, glanced at my watch. When she walked in, I almost stood up. Wavy hair, fitted white blouse, red lipstick. So grown up I felt like I was waiting for a stranger, not my daughter. She didn't hug me, just nodded, sat down and pulled out her phone. "Thanks for coming," I said, trying to start gently. She scrolled. "No big deal." I ordered for her like always, linguine with creamy mushroom sauce and grilled chicken, her old favorite. "I got lasagna. What do you want to drink?" "Iced tea." "No sugar," I smiled. "Since when do you drink it unsweetened?" She shrugged, eyes still on her screen. "Since I started loving myself." The words slid by like a knife across a plate. I didn't ask more. We ate in silence, my occasional questions met with one-word answers. At dessert, I reached for my wallet. "I'll cover it." She didn't look up. Obviously, I swallowed a joke. The waiter brought the bill. I left cash with a tip, neatly, as if proving that even if I was just a clingy old man in someone's eyes, I still had my last shred of courtesy. I stood first, pulled her chair out. "Did you like the meal?" She slung her bag over her shoulder, fixed her hair. "It was fine. I hope we can see each other more often. Not to control you, just, you're the only family I have left." For the first time, she looked me in the eye, but it wasn't soft. It was cold as marble. "Dad, I think it's time you get it. I don't want to stay in touch anymore. I don't see you as a positive part of my life." My heart tightened, but I didn't yell, didn't cling. I just asked, "Why?" She sighed, like she was tired of explaining the obvious. "You make me feel guilty every time I live my own life. You're always there like a judgmental shadow. I want to be free. I want the right to not need you in my life." I nodded. Not in agreement, but because I had nothing left to say. I grabbed my keys, walked out first. She followed, her high heels clicking on the sidewalk like a metronome for each step away. I opened the car door for her, like always. But this time, she didn't get in. She stopped. "I think I'll call an Uber." I froze, "But I can drive you home." "No need. It's easier this way for both of us." And she turned away, leaving me with my hands still holding the open door and the cold void where a loved one once stood. I sat in the car for nearly 10 minutes, didn't start it, didn't speak, outside. Headlights passed like soulless streaks. On the passenger seat, her crumpled napkin from dinner sat like a sloppy period at the end of a sentence. I picked it up, meant to toss it in the glove compartment, but I kept it. Not out of sentiment, but because I needed something to remind me that meal was real, that I'd tried, that I'd sat across from my daughter and asked, "What did I do wrong?" And the answer was, "Exist." And the worst pain wasn't the rejection. It was that I'd paid for my own departure. No thank you, no hug, no softened glance, just an empty chair, a crumpled napkin, and a cold receipt I brought home. I sat in the middle of the living room, spreading out all the scraps of paper I'd kept in the wooden drawer under the TV cabinet across the floor, as if reconstructing a crime scene. But this wasn't a murder case. This was the slow killing of a father, by trust, by silent sacrifice, by hundreds of small expenses I once thought insignificant. The receipt for the MacBook Pro, $1,649, plus 3 years of AppleCare. The ticket stub for a round-trip flight home for Thanksgiving, $438. The lease agreement for the apartment she wanted to move into to escape dorm pressure, with the deposit I fronted, $2,000. Each piece of paper, each line of numbers, like thin blades, not painful at first but bleeding quietly. I don't know how much I spent on her. Honestly, I never counted. Every time she texted, "Dad, I need $50 quick to fix my phone," or "Dad, it's my friend's birthday. I don't want to show up empty-handed." I sent the money without thinking, because I thought, I'm her dad. If I don't do it, who will? But now, sitting amid this pile of papers, I started to calculate, coldly, soberingly terrifying. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop. One column for dates, one for expense details, one for amounts. I typed each line like I was typing out memories I should have forgotten. In just 3 hours, the total surpassed $112,000. And that was just the last 3 years. I remember her saying once, "You don't need to buy me gifts, I just want freedom." But the truth is, her freedom was bought with the money I squeezed from my labor. Summer overtime, skipping dinners with coworkers, not stepping foot in a movie theater for 6 years because tickets are too expensive. I pushed the chair back from the table, stood up, went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, poured water. Standing there, I asked myself, if I were a stranger, would I have given her this much? The answer was no, absolutely not. But because I'm her dad, I didn't know how to stop. I always thought a father's love was limitless. I was wrong. The boundary isn't about loving more or less. The boundary is knowing when someone is hollowing you out without seeing you as solid ground anymore. I remember the last thing Maria said when she was still alive, "Don't sacrifice until she thinks it's her right." I laughed then. "You're too pessimistic." But now her words rang like a prophecy. After cleaning up the papers, I put them all in a clear plastic box, labeled it "Daughter's Documents," and shoved it under the bed. Not to keep, but to stop seeing. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't play music. I just lay still in a house so quiet I could hear the wheezing of the neglected air conditioner. Something I hadn't fixed because I was waiting for my paycheck after sending her money for the new semester. I thought of something simple. My daughter never invited me to a meal. Not because she didn't have money. I still saw her photos online, checking in at rooftop restaurants, sipping smoky cocktails, posing with her boyfriend. But I, the one behind all that funding, never got invited to share a salad. Not because I needed repayment, but because an invitation would show, "Dad, you're still part of me." And then I realized the pain wasn't losing money. It was losing my place. I was no longer her anchor. I was just a breathing wallet, a bank card with excess emotions. And if I kept going like this, what would I become? A broken old man, mentally, financially, trust drained, just to one day get a text saying, "Dad, don't show up anymore." I lay on my back, eyes wide open in the dark, heart empty but mind racing. And amid all those chaotic thoughts, one idea rose quietly, slow, cold, sharp as a blade to the chest. It was time to start taking back what was mine. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because if I didn't, I'd vanish completely. And I wasn't ready to vanish. Not like this. Not when I hadn't said that I'd given so much I forgot I needed to keep something for myself. I called the bank at 8:02 a.m. the next day, right when they opened. The female operator's voice, young and polite, made me feel like an overly cautious old man. "I want to cancel a secondary credit card," I said, gripping the phone as if afraid some part of me would snatch it back. She asked, "For what reason, sir?" I paused for a beat. "Misuse of privileges. The cardholder is no longer eligible for support." I didn't say, "My daughter told me to get out of her life." I didn't say, "I paid over $100,000 just to get a stranger's glance." She read back the details. "The secondary card under, is that correct? Current balance is $47. I'll close it within 24 hours. I nodded, though she couldn't see. "Please close it immediately." When I hung up, the house was dead silent, as if the air itself was waiting to see if I'd regret it. I didn't. Not then. I walked to the dining table, took out the expense notebook, and drew a red line through the page titled "Monthly Support for Daughter." Under fixed expenses, tuition stopped last semester when she dropped out midterm without telling me. Car insurance I'd transferred to my name. Rent, she moved out last month. I wrote in bold marker, "From today, no more money sent." That afternoon, I called the car insurance company. "I want to remove a secondary user from the policy." The male agent asked, "Is the user your daughter, sir?" I paused. "Yes." "Who owns the car?" "Me." "Then no problem." Hearing that, I felt a slight relief, as if I'd just reclaimed ownership of something after years of being treated like I owned nothing but responsibilities. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the sofa, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Not out of worry, but because a strange new feeling crept into my chest. Liberation. Not from my daughter. I never wanted that. But from the role of a father taken for granted. Before, when I closed my eyes, my mind raced to her. Is she eating enough? Is it safe for her to be out so late? Has her rent been paid this month? But tonight, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, I didn't have to think about her. I thought about me. I got up near 2 a.m., made a cup of hot cocoa. In the kitchen, it was just me and the dripping faucet. I sat at the dining table, opened my phone. Her last text was 3 weeks ago. "Need more money for the new course, urgent." "No, Dad, no thanks. I held it, deleted it. Then I opened the banking app, checked the main account, a balance of nearly $4,200. For the first time in months, I didn't see that number vanish like a car with no brakes. I thought of what I could do: fix the air conditioner, replace the living room bulb, buy new shoes instead of gluing the toe of my old ones. Small things, but mine. I turned on the TV just for background noise and saw a rerun of a movie, a single dad raising a daughter with cancer. The man sold his house, his car, took night security jobs to afford her treatment. I looked at him, not seeing nobility, just familiarity. I'd been him, except I got no grateful glances. I turned off the TV, stood up, opened the file cabinet, pulled out the car registration. My name, my address. The Civic was still parked out front where I'd brought it after taking it back from her school. I'd never taken anything back in my life. Not a borrowed jacket, not unpaid loans, not lost trust. But this car, for the first time I thought, I deserved to take something back. And then I exhaled slowly, the first time in years without a sigh. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't dream. I just lay there in a house so eerily quiet and knew I'd cut a cord I'd held too long, not realizing it was strangling me from within. And when it was gone, I suddenly felt maybe I could still breathe. I went to her school on a Tuesday morning, sky overcast, wind-flipping flyers posted at the student center. I didn't call ahead, didn't text, the 3-hour drive, and I didn't play music the whole way. I didn't know what I expected: a chance to explain, a startled glance, or just to see her one last time before letting go. But I wasn't there to talk. I was there to take the car back. The silver Civic sat in the student lot between two fancy SUVs, probably her friends, the ones I'd seen in photos, grinning in designer dresses, raising wine glasses on balconies strung with fairy lights. I recognized the car instantly, not by its color, but by the small scratch on the driver's door handle from when she scraped a pole learning to drive. I'd repainted it, but the faint mark remained. I parked my car 2 rows away, walked slowly, as if afraid to disturb the life I'd once built. My hand gripped the spare key, the one I'd made the day we got the car, not for theft protection, but to save her if she ever lost hers. Now I needed it, not to help, but to retreat. I opened the door, slid inside. The scent of women's perfume lingered, a sharp sweetness she never used when living with me. The driver's seat had a dip, the mark of years I was no longer invited to sit beside her. A Target bag sat in the trunk, receipt dated last Friday. Clearly, she still used the car as usual, spending my money on gas, maintenance, insurance, like it was a given. I started the engine. It purred smoothly, as if relieved to return to the hands that cared for it. I didn't hesitate anymore. I backed out, circled the lot to avoid being seen stealing the car. In my head, a voice, maybe Maria's, asked if I was sure, if this was the best way. But I was too used to putting others' needs above my feelings. And today, just this once, I chose differently. I drove through the campus gates, past the dorms, past the coffee shop where I'd once waited 2 hours to bring her a jacket in her freshman winter. I didn't look back. I was afraid if I did, I'd see her standing there, shocked. Not at losing the car, but that I had the resolve to do it. When I got home, I parked the Civic in the garage, turned off the engine, sat still for a long while. The sun was high but not strong enough to warm the air cooling between me and the daughter I once saw as my world. I took my phone, typed a short text. I took the car back, because I'm the one who paid for it. No explanations, no extra emotions. Sent. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed like it was being yanked from my hand. First text: "Are you crazy?" Second: "Give me my car back right now." Third: "You have no right to do this." Fourth, longer: "Do you know I have work, appointments, plans? Who do you think you are, taking away my way to get around?" I read them all, didn't reply. It felt strange. I, who'd skipped shifts for her headaches, driven 2 hours to change her tire in winter, was now unmoved by her angry, demanding, accusing tone, because I knew her anger wasn't from loss, but from shock. Shock that the father who'd always done everything had learned to say no. I silenced my phone, set it on the table, stood up, opened the garage door, looked at the Civic in the midday light, quiet, peaceful, as if untouched by the roads it traveled under her indifference. I ran my hand over the hood, whispered, "You don't deserve to be used as a tool for abused love." The car didn't answer. But I knew at least part of me had been reclaimed. Not money, but self-respect. And in that garage, amid old boxes, oil stains, and the echo of realization, I saw I could start taking my life back, bit by bit, starting from the very place I'd lost it, when I gave everything without ever asking for anything in return. The first text came at 1:12 p.m., just 2 words: "Really disappointed." I was dusting the bookshelf when the phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen, then went back to work. The rag in my hand was so worn it barely wiped anything, but I kept scrubbing the shelf's edge as if I could scrape off the years of being taken for granted clinging to the wood. 5 minutes later, the second text. You don't think I'd have something to say? I'm stranded because of you. I exhaled, a soft sigh slipping from my lips. Not bitter, not stinging, just a quiet emptiness. I didn't reply. The phone buzzed again. My friends have to drive me to class. I'm humiliated in front of them. Why did you do this? I set the rag down, looked out the window at a gray sky, clouds heavy like my heart weeks ago, before I decided to stop. No, they just hung there. No rain, no thunder, just an empty sky. And so was I. 14 texts came in an hour, some short, some long-winded, as if she wanted to hurl every imagined hurt at me. I thought you were a decent person. I'll never forgive you. Don't you love me anymore? If Mom were alive, she'd hate you. That last one hit something deep. I stared at it for a long time. Maria, the only woman who ever understood me. I'm not sure she'd hate me, but I'm sure of one thing. If she were alive, this might never have happened. Maybe she'd have been the one to tell me to stop in time. But Maria's gone, and I had to do what men are rarely taught. Stop for myself. I picked up the phone, set it to do not disturb, didn't block, didn't delete, just silence. Because now I didn't need to explain, no more justifying, no obligation to absorb every burst of anger as if it were the only reward I deserved from the child I raised. That evening I cooked a simple meal, scrambled eggs, steamed broccoli, a slice of bread. No one to cook a second portion for. I ate slowly, no rush, chewing thoroughly, tasting the salt, not saltier than tears, but enough to keep my heart from feeling empty. I turned on the living room light, not for brightness, but so the house knew it still had someone living in it. I took the old photo, the one of the three of us at Santa Monica Beach, and put it in a drawer, not to forget, but to stop seeing it every day. Night fell, the air conditioner still wheezing steadily. My back ached, not from age but from years of bending to lift someone who never looked back. The phone kept lighting up with notifications, social media, emails, the occasional new text from her, but I didn't read them. I wasn't afraid of being misunderstood anymore. Not afraid of being called cold, unloving, or abandoning my child. I didn't abandon anyone. I was just choosing myself again. And for the first time in years, I slept without the phone by my pillow. No waiting for a ring. No hoping for an apology. No expecting a miracle. Just sleep, like a man who owed no one anything. And the next morning, when sunlight pierced the old curtains, I knew I hadn't been wrong to stay silent. Because sometimes, the truest response is silence. Silence. To teach the other person that love isn't a given. And no one has the right to push someone to the bottom and expect them to keep smiling, reaching out. Not anymore. Never again. I wrote the letter on a moonless night when the desk lamp was the only thing anchoring me to reality. Outside, the wind blew through the old maple trees, leaves rustling as if whispering something to me. A reminder of things left unsaid. I took out paper, an ink pen, and sat down like it was an old habit. No computer, no phone, just me and the rough surface of the paper, where I'd pour out what my throat was too brittle to voice. Dear daughter, I don't know where to begin. Maybe with an apology, if that's what you're expecting. But if you want an apology for me stopping the payments, taking back the car, staying silent through your angry texts, then no, I can't. Not because I don't want to, but because if I did, you'd think I was wrong. And for the first time in my life, I'm not sure letting you grow used to a father who always takes the blame is the right thing. I'm not perfect, that's for sure. I've been over-controlling, overly worried, meddled in things I should have let you learn on your own. But do you know where it all came from? From fear that if I didn't do enough, you'd lack love, lack protection, lack confidence in yourself. I filled every gap in your life with my own sacrifice, and one day I realized I'd forgotten someone, me. I stopped writing, exhaled and looked at the photo on the wall. You at 5, in the red knit cap Maria made, mouth smeared with vanilla ice cream. Back then, your laugh was enough to make me feel another day was worth living. Now that laugh echoes in my head, but it's the sound of something distant, tainted, layered with words like controlling, toxic, invading boundaries. I wrote on. You said I make you feel guilty, but daughter, have you ever thought, I've lived my whole life with guilt too? Guilty for not buying you the designer dress you wanted, guilty for not taking you to Paris like your friend's dad did, guilty that Maria left too soon and I couldn't fill both roles, guilty that when you were sad I only knew to hand you a credit card instead of advice. But you know what? There's one guilt I'm only now admitting, the guilt of not teaching you that love isn't a privilege, let alone something to exploit. I never expected repayment, never wanted gratitude, but I did hope for one thing, respect, that's all. Not expensive gifts, long phone calls, or Father's Day social media posts. Just one time hearing you say, Dad, I understand, but maybe that's too much for you. I stopped writing, set the pen down, gripped my hand to keep the ink from smearing. The paper had a few creases. I'd unconsciously crumpled it while writing, as if the words were too heavy for a flat surface. I looked at the last line. I'm not sending this to make you feel guilty. I'm writing to remind myself, whether you come back or not, I'm still your dad, a father who loved you with everything he had, and today that man chooses to love himself after losing himself for too long. I signed, Dad. Didn't stamp it. I placed it in the nightstand drawer, under a stack of old books I no longer read, not because I was afraid she'd find it, but because I needed to keep something unsent, unrefuted, unanswered by anger, a final word. But for me, not for her. And that night, when everything was quiet, I didn't feel empty after writing for the first time. I didn't hope she'd read it. I didn't hope she'd understand. I only hoped that one day, when I falter, I could reread it and remember there was a father who loved with all he had. And in the end, he learned to let go. Not because he stopped loving, but because of self-respect. The call came on a Monday morning while I was brewing coffee and wondering if I should repaint the peeling wall on the porch. An unknown number. A woman's voice. Young, polite, but with a tone that put me on guard instantly. Hello, sir. I'm Melissa, a reporter from the lifestyle section of the Herald. I hope I'm not intruding, but we're working on a piece about parent-adult-child relationships in the modern era, and we have reason to believe you may be connected to a story circulating on social media. I froze. Coffee spilled over the cup's rim, dripping onto the counter. I didn't answer right away. Part of me was stunned. The other part felt something quietly shatter inside. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I hate to bring this up, but it seems your daughter posted on a student forum. She wrote that you suddenly took back her car, cut off all financial support, and called it emotional punishment. The story's spreading quickly, and we'd like your response for objectivity. I closed my eyes, hand gripping the table's edge. I should have known this was coming. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up, but she wrote, and this time she wrote for the world. No, I have no comment, I said, voice straining to stay calm. Melissa remained polite. We respect your privacy, but I should mention the article will run this week. Can you at least confirm if the basic events are accurate? You want the truth? I heard myself snap, a last instinct from years of being forced into silence. The truth is, I paid her tuition, bought her a car, covered insurance, paid her rent, handled every cold medicine for nearly a decade. I never abandoned her. I only stopped when she told me to get out of her life, and I did exactly that. Silence on the other end. I heard keyboard clicks. The reporter probably didn't expect such a clear answer. I understand, but do you have anything to share with other parents in similar situations? A message? I gave a small laugh. A message? Tell them, love doesn't mean letting someone turn you into a silent ATM. I'll note that, Melissa replied, without a hint of sarcasm. Thank you for your time. I hung up. I felt no anger, no fear, just a gentle hollowness, as if someone had touched an old scar. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make it throb again. That afternoon, I opened my laptop. My daughter's name appeared on a major Reddit page, titled When My Dad Vanished from My Life, because I refused to follow his rules. Hundreds of comments. Many sided with her. Some said maybe he'd had enough, but the numbers didn't matter. What stopped me was one line. I thought my dad loved me unconditionally. Turns out his love had a price. The balance in his account. I closed the laptop. Didn't comment. Didn't write a rebuttal. Didn't call anyone. Because I understood. When someone fears the truth, they rewrite it to make it easier to live with. They don't need to be right. They just need allies. And social media, full of people hurting, angry at their parents, is ready to raise hands in empathy without knowing the full story. But I know every receipt, every sleepless night, every 3 a.m. reply to a text asking, "Are you coming home tonight?" I know I'm not perfect, but I'm not a villain. I stepped into the backyard, where Maria's lavender bushes still clung to life, frail but persistent. I sat on the wooden chair, watched the flowers sway in the breeze, and knew my daughter chose to let the world see me through a narrow lens. But I don't live in that world. I live here in this small garden, where things don't need to be shared publicly to be real. And if someone asked, "Do you still love your daughter?" I wouldn't answer, not because I'm hiding, but because some loves, when twisted long enough, lose their name. They become a shadow, flickering in memory like an unsent letter, a repossessed car, and a sky that doesn't need anyone else to confirm it's raining. I wake early each morning, not to an alarm, but to sunlight slipping through the curtains, a light I'd ignored for years while living in the shadow of being a father, a pillar, an emergency emotional and financial bank for someone who never truly saw me as a person. Now that light is a gentle reminder. I'm still here. I still have choices, and I don't need to apologize for that. My house no longer hums with urgent texts, emails demanding tuition payments, or nights startled by someone leaving car lights on or calling at 2 a.m. saying, "Dad, the car broke down again." Instead, there's the soft whistle of the kettle at dawn, the old radio playing wordless jazz, and the rustle of wind through the potted plants I started growing last month. The plants live, and for the first time in years, so do I. I've learned to shop for one. A loaf of bread, a piece of fish, an avocado not too ripe. I no longer check prices wondering would she eat this, or is this healthy enough for her? I just ask, do I want to eat this? A question so small, yet one I never allowed myself to answer for years. I walk the neighborhood every afternoon, stopping by the used bookstore on the corner, where the owner knows my name after 3 visits. I pick books by their covers, titles, the smell of paper, no longer choosing gifts for students, young adult titles, or self-help books on how not to hurt your kids. I read slowly, sip hot tea, and sometimes nod at lines that make me feel I can still think, still feel, still alive. Yesterday, I joined a watercolor class for seniors. I'm not good, but the teacher smiled and said, "Your painting has feeling." I laughed. No one ever said I had feelings. Before, if I got angry, I was difficult. If I stayed silent, I was cold. If I reacted, I was toxic. No one ever asked, "How's Dad feeling?" Not even the daughter I raised with everything I had. I don't follow her social media anymore. I don't reread her posts, not because I'm angry, but because I've learned. I can't control how others tell their story, even if I'm the main character twisted in it. Everyone has their own truth, and so do I. My truth is, I loved my daughter so much, I lost the human part of myself. I once thought I couldn't live without her, but after everything, I realized living without her hurts. But living without self-respect, without dignity, without a voice, I die. Quietly, day by day. I've started writing again. Not unsent letters, but notes for myself. Stray thoughts, strange dreams, small beauties in the day. A red leaf on my car seat, kids laughing by the fence, sunlight slanting through an old glass. No one cares about these things, but to me they prove life can still be gentle, even without someone on the other end asking, "Dad, how was your day?" The few friends I still talk to say, "You should make peace, she's still your daughter." I just smile. No one understands the wound of the person you love most saying, "I don't want you in my life anymore." No one gets the pain of emptying your last dollar, only to hear you're controlling, imposing, unworthy of respect. I don't need peace, I need to breathe. If my daughter calls one day, I'll listen. If she apologizes, I'll hear her out. If she needs help, I'll help within the bounds of kindness, not the callous of endurance. But if that day never comes, I'll live. No blame, no resentment, no expectations. Because now I don't live in lack. I live in the fullness of someone who knows how to say enough. I don't need to apologize for taking back the car I paid for stopping the money when treated like a tool, for choosing silence over baseless accusations. I'm not a perfect father, but I'm a person. And in the end, living as a person, not an endless resource, not a drained name, is the least I can give myself after years of unrecognized sacrifice. And so my new life begins. No one's approval needed, no thank you required, and no apology owed. The story my daughter told me to stay out of her life. So I took back the car and the credit card. Reflects a simmering reality in today's American society. The growing generational gap between parents and adult children, especially when values of responsibility, independence, and gratitude are no longer defined the same way. The father in the story played the role of the sacrificer, paying tuition, rent, buying a car, handling repeated financial crises. But in return, he was labeled toxic, controlling, and imposing boundaries. This isn't a tale of anger or revenge, but an awakening, when the father realized that kindness without boundaries leads to the erasure of self. In modern American society, where children increasingly demand personal freedom and healing, parents, especially those from a generation of sacrifice and dedication, are often left with feelings of emotional and financial exploitation. The lesson isn't to stop loving your child, but to learn to love yourself in time. The father's act of taking back the credit card, repossessing the car, and choosing silence against attacks wasn't abandonment, but a reclamation of his right to exist as a person worthy of respect. In today's U.S. cultural context, where boundaries and personal rights are championed, the lesson for both sides is true freedom only exists when both parties know where the line is and value those who prioritize them for years. If you've been a parent or a child who forgot to look back, please subscribe to join us in hearing more silent stories behind closed doors. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video, where we continue exploring the invisible wounds shaping a generation.